have what's going to be one of the rarest medallions because of our light attendance. Thank you so much for coming to the coin panel over the Rogue One panel. Oh, wait, Mark, we need you for the panel. Sorry, Mark wanted to go to Rogue One. But yeah, so as I mentioned in other panels, we have a whole bunch of people that make this collecting track possible. And I really want to do a shout out to the medallion sponsors. I don't know if you guys realize, but there's about tens of thousands of pounds in basically donations that all these sponsors give to make these medallions available for free to attendees. So all of the sponsors give money to allow this to happen. It's all collector-driven event. There's no corporate sponsorship or anything like that. So I kind of want to do a big shout out to the medallion sponsors. So as some of you have seen already, but if you haven't, we have a collecting track scavenger hunt going on. So the way it works is you go around all of Celebration, and there are different stations where you can get stamps for that are related to collecting. So if you can imagine, you know, as a hint, you know, clubs, you know, collecting clubs or dealers. We'll start to get more hints as Celebration goes on, but we already have a whole bunch of attendees going around trying to get their cards filled up. And if you get all the different action figure stamps, you'll be able to come back and see one of the volunteers and get an award for completing the scavenger hunt. So check with the volunteers to get a card if you haven't gotten one already. We're kind of rationing them out after each panel, and then come back when you've got it all filled out. All right. So next, I want to introduce my colleagues here, James Gallo and Mark Salotti, the king of coins. And we're going to do a panel on Star Wars vintage coin collecting.
So you would have had another 6 Ewoks and another 8 and send in your proof of purchases to get your single coin. This is an example of a single coin mailer that Kenner sent out, one random coin at a time. If you were really persistent and you really wanted that full set of coins, Kenner didn't actually advertise that a set would be available, but they were really very good about appeasing people that were searching for things. So if you had asked them, contacted them by mail, or they would tell you it was $24.99 and you could get a full set of 62 coins. The set came pretty much as pictured in a generic mailer in a clear bag. For 25 bucks, you could have all 62 coins. That set of coins is probably worth over 10,000 US dollars at this point.
Now, in Australia, Tall Toys provided smaller department stores, actually smaller, what we call bar and bar stores, with a selection of coins and these stickers that they would apply to their stock. And at the counter, after you bought the figure, you'd be given a random coin. Actually, they were quite generous about letting you select which coin you wanted, so you didn't really end up with any duplication. And I found at least 60 coins distributed that way back in the day. Japan was a little more precise, I guess, and the Sakuna company selected about 7 coins. Well, we've only discovered about 7 today, where they glued the coin to the card and they shrink wrap the card so that it wouldn't be damaged. No one could remove the coin. And it's got a white cardboard backer on the card so that the thing with the shrink wrapping doesn't include the figure. There's evidence that some of the text on some of the coins was altered, and there's some pre-production coins that exist that suggest that they would be, the text was changed so it could be paired with more than one figure. And many of those coins are visible in this famous photo from the Toy catalog produced by the Force Marketing.
So there's some coins that have multiple things on it, like the sail barge is a very generic coin, the Jordans has 3 characters on it, the creatures have 3 characters on it, so the thought is that Kenner was going to use that coin for more than one character. So these are examples of toy fail displays. These displays are probably larger than the displays we have out here. The idea of those resulted from these. These were at Toy Fair, 85 Toy Fair, and they were basically, a way to really catch people's eye. Kenner was trying to promote this new additional item to go with the figures and really trying to get retailers' attention. So these displays are quite large and quite impressive. There wasn't much else that they did with how the Force logo as far as displays. You can see the artwork for the Boba Fett coin that was used on all the stickers. It was the only coin that was used for the front of the cards and the stickers that were applied in the store onto existing stock, which is sometimes why you'll see an older figure with the Power Force sticker on it. And then they did a 2-tier action figure bin, and that's the header for it. It's one of the rarest Kenner Star displays, so it's really hard to find.
And one thing that happens in coin collecting, if the coins themselves aren't, difficult enough to find, some collectors will try to go even further and find the different artifacts that went into the process of making the coin that are one of a kind or very rare, but are just byproducts of the production process. So, there are some examples here of some early versions of the Power of the Force coins, like the one on the top row is known by collectors as the loop pitch coin. And that one was a coin design that was originally pitched by one of the two mints, worldwide mint, that ended up making the coins for Kenner, and they presented it as a concept for the original Power of the Force coins as a very different look and layout and design from the actual Power of the Force coins, but it's one of the early ones that got the concept rolling.
And that company was more used to working in precious and semi-precious metals, so they've actually struck there's a bronze and a nickel version of that coin because of that.
That's right. And then there's another early Luke coin, which is a Luke X-Wing coin that was done at a smaller size of Power of the Force coins. It has the same kind of design on the Luke X-Wing Power of the Force coin, but it's a smaller scale. And then in a lot of Kenner internal photography, there was what we call the frosted version of the Lando coin that you see at the bottom row. And frosted really looks like, if you're familiar in coin collecting, there's the notion of proof sets of coins where they strike a coin twice with the dies, and they're highly polished dies. And so the frosted coin has that appearance. And that was used in a lot of the catalog photography for the coin set for the Lando coin. So there's some examples of that. And these are some examples of coins that actually exist in multiple quantities. So these can be found by collectors and not all one-of-a-kind coins. There are also a bunch of unreleased Power of the Force coins. So there is a gold version of an R2-D2 coin that's actually different than the regular R2-D2 coin from the Power of the Force set. So the gold tone is one of the differences. Another difference is the logo on the back of the coin. So the R2-D2 gold coin has the Power of the Force logo instead of the Star Wars logo. So it's a bit different. There's some speculation by collectors that this was going to be a mail-in offer as a special coin, but it may have just been a test for what's known as the 63rd coin that we'll show you shortly. There's also a bunch of text error and other variants of the coin set. So for example, they did a version of the Han Solo trench coat coin where they spelled his name Hans Solo. So a rare version of that coin has Hans instead of Han. And so a lot of collectors are trying to find every variation, trying to hunt that one down. There's also a version of the sail skiff coin that doesn't say Star Wars across the top. And then there are two versions of the Creatures coin. They have two different write-ups on the back. There's one that references the cantina, and there's one that references cafes. And the cafe one was the original one. They switched to the cantina, so the cafe one is much harder to find. So really advanced coin collectors try to find all these different variations. And then there was as I mentioned, the coins were at the very end of the vintage toy line, and it was really the last promotion for movie Star Wars action figures and for the Droids of Ewoks cartoon. So one of the ideas for the next wave of figures was to have a mail-in offer where kids could send away for a coin album and also receive a special 63rd coin, which is the coin you see pictured here. So in this image you see hands holding a lightsaber, like presumably Luke's hands from the Return of the Jedi movie poster. And there are a few different versions of this coin in different colors, like in bronze color, different gold colors, and then just the silver tone one. The idea was, though, that it was going to be a special gold coin that you could mail for and get this album. But this never got offered as a mail-in offer. It only existed in prototype form. And that's how we, as collectors, know about it, is we researched and found examples of these prototypes from talking to Kenner employees.
And personally, I believe that gold Arctic coin is related to this promotion because of the similar back on it.
And then so the 63rd coin was going to appear as the offer on the 93 back Power of the Force cards. So as many of you may know, the Power of the Force line took the Kenner action figure line to 92 figures, and the idea was in the US that they were going to add Yak Face as the 93rd figure, and that's when they were going to introduce this coin album and 63rd coin.
And you can see that gold Arctic coin picture there as well, which I like to think supports my theory.
And then there's a whole bunch of different artifacts that go into the process of making these coins. So and there were two different mints that Kenner used. So Kenner, as a toy company, was very good at producing toys. They knew that process, but making these aluminum coins wasn't something that they were accustomed with. with. So what they did is they hired two different mints, one locally called Osborne Coin, based in Cincinnati, which is in the same city as Kenner, and another one called Worldwide Mint, based in Minneapolis. And they farmed out basically half of the coins to each of the mints. And there are a bunch of different prototypes that we'll show you from both of those mints. So there are some renderings and sketches of initial design sketches of the coins. So one of the early stages was to really draw up what the coins would look like. And many of them from the very first sketches stayed the same, and others have a very different appearance. Like for example, you see the Darth Vader one at the bottom in the center had a very different design where it's almost like the Luke pitch coin we saw earlier, where you see kind of full body, full scale, Darth Vader and then his face. And then they decided to change the concept and make it a lot simpler, like the coin you see on the left. Now what they did was they took those renderings and sketches and then transformed them into sculpts. And a lot of these were done by in-house at Kenner. So some of it was people that they contracted out, but also they had Kenner sculptors doing this. The most common form of sculpt was in plaster. So there were some that were sculpted in wax, but they started with a big platter at about 6 times the scale of the coin, and that's what they used to kind of get the original detail down for the coins. They do it at a larger scale so that when they reduce it, it just has just really nice details in it.
That green residue on the hand carbonite coin is mold released to help the next stage of production peel off here.
And then these are some other kinds of prototypes that are in the next stages. So after you have the sculpt, what they do is they make what's known as a hard copy. And for the coins, those were a negative imprint of the coin, where they took the sculpt and then just kind of took an imprint of it in urethane. And they used that to kind of get it down to something they could do for tooling. So they had a process they used to give curvature to the coin, where they then took that negative image of the coin and made another positive image, which collectors call a soft copy, but basically it was a softer casting of the coin in a positive form. And that, what they could do with that is then put it on a platter and curve it, and then make one more hard copy that was a negative hard copy, and that was what gave the nice curvature you see to a coin, the face of a coin. And so it was just a multi-step process of different imprints, all originating from the plaster sculpt. And yeah, the whole process of making these coins, this is still kind of very common today with Disney and Lucasfilm. Licensees had to get all these things approved by Lucasfilm. So there's, as we've researched this, we found Kenner people who kept a lot of this paperwork. And it really documents the process of what they liked, didn't like, who they spoke to at Lucasfilm. They had to get approval for all of these things. Like before any product goes to market, it has to go through a lengthy approval process. And there's a ton of paperwork that we have on that process.
And it seems that the Vader coin in particular was very important to get. And there was a lot of backwards and forwards with corrections to it to make sure they got it just right. Sorry, I was going to say there's a picture of the two different mints that produce the coins. Sorry to jump in.
Yeah, and Worldwide Mint, the one based in Minneapolis, Minnesota, they were the ones that were originally pitched the idea of these coins to Kenner. Kenner loved the idea. Originally it was supposed to be like a stocking stuffer for Christmas. And they really got the idea, a lot of the concepts for it came from different magazines and posters. So the X-Wing came from an image that was used elsewhere, a poster, like a poster magazine that had like a Luke image and had an X-Wing image, and those were used to kind of come up with the concept. I think the original concept had no prior Kenner approval. It was just something Worldwide came up with and presented to Kenner. And so Kenner liked the idea, but then when they altered it a little bit, they said, well, instead of a stocking stuffer, they wanted to do it as something to bundle with the action figures, and which was a kind of win-win. It was a way to kind of give new enthusiasm to the action figures by doing something different. But Kenner also introduced the idea of another mint that could get involved in the process. So they added Osborne coinage, which was based in Cincinnati, near Kenner, and so they didn't give the exclusive license to Worldwide, who had come up with the concept.
And also, Osborne were more familiar with working with aluminum, or aluminium, as you say. Whereas, like I said before, Worldwide worked mainly with silver and bronze and nickel. And the owner of Worldwide believed that in the end they shared the role with him because he came up with the idea of the law. There might be some issues with the law.
And then, yeah, as I mentioned, they created the, so originally, while Worldwide made the first pitch coin, the next one was created by Osborne, which was a small-scale version of the Luke X-Wing coin. So they were testing out a different scale of the coin. But they decided to go back to the dimensions of the original pitch coin. They went with that size later on.
And this is just the paperwork that was provided to Worldwide Mint, showing dimensions of coins and specifically how they wanted them made. And again, some production numbers and timelines, just let me throw this in here to show.
Other artifacts in the process to do the typesetting on the coins. The different mints use slightly different methods. So Worldwide Mint used this kind of system called dike drills, which are based on a DuPont photosensitive material. And basically, what they did was they would typeset the letter, the wording that went on the coin, and then this was used, and then it printed onto the dies, the actual coin dies. So this is just the process used by Worldwide Mint. Osborne used a different thing for text masters. They used these sync text masters on these metal plates. So they would put all the text that would go on it, and then that would also get translated to the dies. And then the tooling master is the final hard copy that has the curvature to the coin. And that's what was used with a machine called a pantograph machine that would kind of reduce the scale down to the metal coin dies.
And here's just an example of some of the finished dies. I think I'm going to go to the watch this trailer instead. That's what we're saying.
Yeah, so it's tough talking over Road 1 trailer, but anyway, there's some different things they did to the coins once they went through the die process. So they would, and there's some slight variations between the different mints. So they had two different mints. They were given very specific specs, but it sometimes led to slight differences in the coins. So, the Worldwide Mint coins, would have the edges felt very different, a little different than the Osborne coin edges. There's also slight weight differences, but by and large, most collectors could not tell the difference of which coin came from which mint. And it's usually the more advanced collectors that figured it out, but it's actually, they did a great job of matching the coins.
Yeah, and because Worldwide were more used to using precious metals and semi-precious metals, their refining process was a little better. I think they just finished the coin off a little bit. And you see here the breakdown of which coins were made by which company. There was no logic to it. It was completely random. You think it would make more sense if one company did all the Ewoks and droids, but you see that Osborne actually did only one of the Ewoks coins, so there's no logic to it.
Yeah, and then there's some recent advances and discoveries in coin collecting. And those of you that are really into this and may have heard about some of this, but that there were some coins that were sold on the market in recent years that were actually, because this stuff is popular, because even people that work at these mints or work at Kenner are aware that collectors are into them, there are some folks that went back and took the old dies at Osborne Coin and produced a lot of these coins, but used, they were recently struck coins. They were struck in like the late 90s, early 2000s maybe. And the reason that this is concerning is a lot of collectors, they want the original coins from the 1980s. They don't want coins that were made as fakes in the late 90s. And if you go to the forums and you follow this closely on the Facebook groups, you can learn a lot about some of the artifacts to look for, so you can tell if you have an original coin or a fake coin. But this took actually years of detective work by collectors to really try to tell the difference, because it's really almost indistinguishable. These people went into the Osborne coin. It only affects half the coins, the Osborne ones, and they took the old dies. But the dies have been altered over time. They've made some slight changes to the dies over time as Kenner has reissued coins. They've made some changes, and we know because of those changes to the dies, we can put a precise date on the coins that were made, and us to kind of figure out which coins are fake and which ones are original.
It's important to emphasize that it's only 44 coins out of 100, and it was just one mint that's been compromised, essentially.
Yeah, and there are different die discrepancies. Again, this only applies to the Osborne coins. The worldwide mint coins were never fake as we think about it, but there were a bunch of dies and then hobs or hubs, which are used as kind of masters for dies. That in the process of our investigation on this, we found out that actually a lot of the dies that had been sold in previous years were ones that were made in the 90s, basically made for collectors, but they weren't actually the real dies used on the coins. Osborne had kept all the original dies, and they only had one of every die. They had no hobs of the dies, and those only surfaced a couple of years ago, but the dies that had been on the market years earlier, unfortunately, had been faked for collectors. And there, if you get into it, there are some die discrepancies, like the dates are different on some of them. And if you're interested, you can come see us after the panel. We can talk a little bit about specifically what to look for. By and large, you can kind of tell by the size of the dies. But as I said, it took years of detective work for us to really get to the bottom of this, because many of us had bought these dies, the fake ones that hit the market first before the real ones did, and it took a long time to figure this out.
If you just look at the dies, just from the standpoint of a totally, non-knowledgeable standpoint, you can tell that the shorter actual production used dies have a used look to it, more of an aged look to it, where the other ones just are very shiny and there's no markings on them. They're just way cleaner.
They've got pen markings on them that were used to line up the die to the machines and like the
And then there's also, there are, as I mentioned, there's some modern strut coins that hit the market using, in addition to fake dies, they're actually coins that were produced to emulate vintage coins, but they were struck in recent years. And there are ways to tell which of these, some of them are very thin, they're a lot thinner than normal Power of the Force coins, some are very thick, some of them don't have the copyright dates on them. So there are various things you can look for. Unfortunately, there are a few different generations of these fake coins. So there's actually about 3 different generations of them that we've uncovered. So this makes it a little bit complicated to collect in this area, because you have like fake dies and fake coins. But fortunately, it's an arms race and collectors can catch up and get information and uncover this stuff to educate other collectors.
I think we've determined there's probably 4 batches of fake coins that were made. The first and the most obvious, they're the thicker coins that people weigh all the time. They weigh a lot more. And they could be modern test strikes. We don't really know the intent of those, whether they were made to sell to collectors or for the Millennium Minted coin line that has remained in 2000. They could have asked Osborne to send them a series of these coins so they knew what was available. But because they were a thicker gauge, what was used in the Millennium Minted coin line, and they matched that gauge. So they're rather easy to tell. Then there's a second batch that's relatively thin, and they almost seem on the slightly thinner side, even though they weigh maybe a little less, but they're still within the okay weight range. Then there's a normal gauge, which are really hard to tell the difference. They're the one that's almost impossible. I think that they've infiltrated the worst. I really struggle with those, but the easiest is perhaps the more recent one, which are a very high luster aluminium. That was a modern aluminium, sort of aluminium from 2005 even. That was a much higher quality, and that's almost got a mirror finish to it. And it also has the ones that had copyright dates changed for Millennium Minted coin line. Those dates are different, so you can spot those a little easier. So basically, 2 or 3 of the 4 different strikes you can kind of spot. Well, in conclusion, basically, coins are easy to collect, great to look at, and yes, you can collect them on a basic entry level or very advanced level of reproduction material. They're made by 2 different mints. That's very important to remember, because one of the mints, worldwide mints, all the coins made by that company are fine. None of the dies weren't accessed or compromised between the 80s and now, so all those are fine.
this point, all the dies are privately owned.
Yeah, so
There will be no more minting of any of these coins in any way, shape, or form. So, you know, that's an important thing to look at, that at this point it has ended. So what is out there is what's out there.
And just thank you to a few people. And these are some books that are available that contain the coin pre-production process and just information on coins.
Great. Well, thank you guys very much. We do have time for some questions, so if you have any questions, you can just approach the mic there. So, any questions?